This is your World War III update. My friends, 5 days until we turn the page. 5 days until we enter into the next chapter of what appears to be a seemingly endless downward spiral of degeneracy and total confusion ado with the collapse of Western civilization and a march towards World War III. 5 days. What's going to happen in 2025? I'm going to quickly share my predictions for 2025 with you, and then we're going to get into 72 hours worth of backlogged geopolitical news. I have been on a mountaintop, or as we call it here in the prairies, a hill, meditating, hoping that the universe might endow me with the wisdom to try to decipher exactly what is happening in the Matrix and what we can expect in 2025, and here's what I got. I think that in 2025, we are going to see a market crash that is epochal. It is going to scare people. Commodities, equities, asset prices, commodities with the exception of gold and quite possibly oil, are going to crash into the dustbin of history. And it's going to be an immiserating circumstance that is going to push people out into the streets. And we are going to see a resurgence of Occupy Wall Street. We are the 99%. Only this time they might be carrying pitchforks. The political and cultural acrimony is going to reach a boiling point, I do believe. We're going to see some crazy shit, especially when they go door to door and they start scooping people up and sending them back to Mexico. Things are going to get weird, okay? And you need to prepare for things to get incredibly unstable before they straighten out. And Elon Musk and Donald Trump warned us about this, in that the onboarding and the onshoring, I should say, of jobs and industry, once again, it's going to be a process, and it's not going to be easy. And with that comes the crash, and comes the protest and Molotov cocktailing riotous behavior in the streets. We're going to see assassination attempts on political figures. I believe that we're going to set a record this year. In fact, I think, and I'm going to call this one right now, I think that we're going to see high-profile people in the crosshairs like Elon Musk. I think Elon Musk is long overdue for an assassination attempt in light of and I don't say this because I certainly don't want this to happen to anybody, but I just think statistically speaking, he is pushing a lot of people's buttons around the world, both foreign and domestic, and it's only a matter of time before someone takes a shot at Elon, which is probably why he's hanging out so close to Mar-a-Lago, so he can get that free Secret Service type security. We are going to see a pandemic emerge. We're going to see bird flu go human to human. I do believe all the preconditions have been met. The reason why I have this coronavirus thing up here on the screen is because 5 years ago today, January 14th, the World Health Organization said, preliminary investigations conducted by the Chinese authorities have found no clear evidence of human-to-human transmission of the novel coronavirus. So the next 5 years are going to be great, right? Wrong. We all know what happened. So we know that one day they can be saying one thing with certainty, and the next day they can be saying the opposite. So when they're telling you right now, well, you can see it with your own eyes, and of course, this situation was different in the sense that this is a novel virus, okay? So the preconditions that we have right now, the ubiquity of bird flu spread amongst the population of just mammals in general, never mind birds. I mean, all of the boxes are checked, pretty much. All it's going to take is one mutation, and it's game over. And so if they want to play that card, if something doesn't go according to plan with this new and improved Trump 2.0, they're going to push that button. Mark my words, they will push that button. And maybe they won't even have to push it. Maybe nature will push it for them. We're going to see the price of gold explode. It has to. Because if Trump doesn't force the hand of the Fed in some way, shape, or form to restart the money printers, or if, pandemic 2.0 doesn't come, I believe that gold and silver, this is going to be one of the last years that they're held under the boot heel of the gold brokers. They can only do it for so long. We're going to see mass militarization. We're going to see a war with Iran. And I believe that the war with Iran is going to start in a way that not many people anticipate. I don't think it's going to be a strike on Iranian facilities for the reasons that we are going to talk about today, but nonetheless, there will be. And I think this is part of the reason why oil is rising. I do believe that the inverse correlation, which is completely counterintuitive between oil prices and peace in the Middle East, we've seen it. There was war raging in the Middle East and oil prices were low relatively. Now, all of a sudden, we have a ceasefire deal that's now been officiated by both parties, and the price of oil is going up. So it makes you wonder, why is that the case? Is that because of what's happening in Russia with the attacks on the oil refineries? We'll talk about that in just a moment. Or is it something to do with the demand, the peace dividend, which is expected to ensue as a result of Trump and the onshoring of industry? Once again, do they expect that demand is going to increase because, you know, the economy is going to improve? I just can't see that because, again, I think we're going to see, and we're long overdue, all the indicators are flashing red right now across the board, that we are well overdue for a massive correction in prices. So how is it that the price of oil is peaking as peace is peaking? Well, it could very well have something to do with the fact that the proxy conflicts have precluded any sort of intervention with Iran directly because, of course, Israel has been bogged down in war after war. Now that they've dealt with Syria, they've dealt with Lebanon and Hezbollah, and they've dealt with Hamas, and while the Houthis, are going to Houthi, there's nothing they can really do about that. It's always going to be a problem so long as, you know, the head of the snake is still there. They're going to go after Iran, and they're probably going to do it in a novel fashion, in a fashion that nobody anticipates, and they're going to have to do it covertly. They're going to have to use subterfuge. They're going to have to try to undermine the government in some way, shape, or form. That is why Iran is preparing on full spectrum in the way that they are. Now, people right now are becoming apoplectic. I'm looking at my news feeds on various social media platforms, and it's just constant banter between left and right, between up and down, and it appears as though this quarreling is going to reach a boiling point very soon, I do believe. And this always happens. The tables always turn. I've seen it now. You know, after I've been alive for a while now, for a minute, and as many of you also have, and it always happens that when you have a polarization on one side, so right now you have the executive branch, you have the House, you have the Senate, all pointing towards Republicans, you're going to see a resurgence of left-wing politics, the likes of which you probably haven't seen in some time, okay? And it's already starting to pick up in a massive way, and it is going to materialize as some sort of movement. I don't know what it's going to be yet, but it is going to be triggered by a market crash, I do believe. That much I know for sure, because that's just mathematically certain. It's just a matter of when it is going to happen. We are seeing just so much insolent behavior from politicians, from high-profile people like the incorrigible Elon Musk. The language that is being used, it's just indicative of hostility that, you know, you just did not used to see. And some people might say that that's a good thing because that's venting, you know, so nobody blows their top. But I don't know, man. I think it's a sign that things are breaking. And I think this is exactly what you might see before the bubble just pops. I mean, what do you expect to see before the bubble pops? Do people seriously think that these record equity prices are going to continue to rise for 4 years in the way that they have for the last 4? It's mathematically impossible. Okay, we would be in a whole new league of market valuation. So the market's gonna crash. Okay, I'm calling it. The the market's going to crash this year. Now, last January, admittedly, I said that we would be in a war with Iran before the election. Was I wrong? Somewhat. Okay, I would say I was 70% right, because nobody at that time could have anticipated Iran firing several salvos in the biggest ballistic missile bombardment in history twice. Okay, nobody anticipated that. I called that in January of last year. Now, I was partially wrong. Perhaps it's a bit delayed. That's going to happen this year as well, I do believe, for the reasons that we're going to get into. Again, you can't trust the WHO, okay? And you can't trust the governments when they say everything is just fine. What they're saying today has really no bearing, and you really can't sleep well at night knowing and taking what they say to the bank anymore. We're just living in a different period of time now where it seems as though things can just flip just like that, okay? And we're entering the age of extremes where these shifts are happening much quicker and much more intensely. So here's what's going on after that 10-minute opening rant. Here's what's going on in the news in the last 72 hours, okay? Russia has been attacked by Ukraine, as you probably know by now, and this could have something to do with the rising oil prices that we are seeing. They have targeted, in the last 72, Engels Air Base, LNG gas depots, oil refineries. We're talking about using Storm Shadow cruise missiles, using ATACMS missiles, using Ukrainian drones, the biggest attacks since the beginning of the war. And these are NATO-backed attacks, clearly trying to try Putin's patience to the best of their capability, knowing full well that in 5 days the playbook may change. The strategy is the same. It's the strategic defeat of Russia. And anybody who is under the delusion that Trump is not gunning for the strategic defeat of Russia is kidding themselves. It's just a different playbook. That's all it is. So these attacks, I believe, are contributing. That, in addition to the recent sanctions put on Russia's shadow fleet, is indeed contributing to the increased oil price. In addition to that, as I predicted last week, Turkstream was attacked. A compressor station at Turkstream. This is one of the remaining pipelines that ships natural gas from, I believe it's natural gas, possibly oil, but I believe it's natural gas, from Russia through Turkey into Europe. Okay, they're trying to completely cut Russia off. And that was attacked. I don't think the attack was successful because Turkstream is still operational. In response to all of this, Russia has been responding in kind, hitting several targets in Ukraine, from factories to power plants all over Ukraine. They've been lighting it up, and they've been more actively using their Su-57 platform, which is their most advanced platform, in order to do these sorties. In light of all of this, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte is saying that we must prepare for war. They keep saying 4 to 5 years to overcome these challenges. Now, let's just presume and take them on their word that you have 4 to 5 years. What can you do in that 4 to 5 year period of time? Well, I'm going to post a video that I did. I'm not sure how many people watched it, but it was a 4 to 5 year plan. And it was all about, if you had 5 years, what could you do? Because you never want to be a panic prepper who is just reacting to the oscillations in the news cycle. You want to be somebody who is planning ahead. And for every sort of reactive preparedness play you do, there should be something more long-term. And if you look at it that way, 5 years is a long time to get situated, no matter what your starting point is. So let's take Mark Rutte on his word that we have 4 to 5 years. And his quote exactly was, "To prevent war, you need to be ready for it. It is time to think like as though we are in wartime." What that means is that war spending is going to increase, military mobilization is going to increase, and all the seeds that have been planted over the last 3 years. All the subtle nudging towards conscription in numerous countries and bunker building. All of this is going to come to fruition on Trump's watch, because of course this is where European countries are going to be scared out of their wits into investing more, because they're going to be concerned that the United States will abandon them. Of course, the United States never will abandon NATO countries. The whole objective is to keep the Germans down, keep the Russians out and the Americans in. So it's never going to happen. It's all bluster. Norway has begun creating bunkers in public spaces. Pretty much every other week, it seems like I'm saying another European country is starting to build bunkers once again. So it is what it is. NATO Steadfast Defender 2025 is kicking off. It's not nearly as big as the record-setting Steadfast Defender that took place last year. Still 10,000 troops nonetheless, and a lot of equipment are partaking in that. One of the biggest stories is this NATO Baltic Defense Initiative, okay? So they're going to start policing neutral waters in the Baltic, okay? So these Russian shadow fleets that are going around that they're claiming are using their anchors and whatever other means to sever these undersea cables, well, they're going to start patrolling and arbitrarily checking different ships using their frigates and their patrol aircraft and drones. They're going to be monitoring behavior in the Baltic. So they're going to try to police the Baltic essentially. And people are concerned that this is going to possibly trigger the Russians into retaliating. So this is big, big news. This is a massive story, and this is likely going to be another major flashpoint for hostilities in 2025. Mark my words. There's going to be a Russian ship that is flagged by one of these military vessels, and it is not going to comply, and something is going to happen. Okay? Or there is just going to be more undersea acts of sabotage. What you're seeing behind me here, by the way, I should probably have told you this, but it's just one of the many videos coming out of Russia's oil and gas infrastructure that has been heavily bombarded by the Ukrainians. That Vladimir Putin, man, that's one patient mofo. Unfortunately, the photo op that he's waiting for, I don't think is going to deliver the delay that he is hoping. The photo op I'm speaking of course, is when Trump goes and shakes his hand. That's going to happen this year. Where it's going to take place, who knows? It's going to be in Turkey, maybe in Switzerland. I don't know. I can't see Putin with that ICC hit on his head. I can't see him going too far. Possibly Turkey, but who knows? But they're definitely going to meet. And everybody's going to be like, yay, and there's going to be flowers and confetti and all that stuff, and then the reality will sink in within a few weeks that nothing has changed, and in fact, on a strategic level, we're going to be moving towards war in a way that the whole Pete Hegseth poster boy thing, trust me, that's all for propaganda, straight-jawed, like haircut you can set your watch to, that kind of thing. That's all for the purpose of remasculating the U.S. military. Watch. We're going to see a new all that you can be in the Army campaign, and I guarantee you're going to see Hegseth out there fully kitted out at the range, and everybody's going to be like, yeah, right? It's going to happen. Just, not to be a Nostradamus, but it's going to happen. What else we got? Germany is ordering the shoot down of drones near critical infrastructure. These are things you thought would have happened already, but, that's what's going to happen now. Speaking of which, DJI has removed its geofencing. I just did a video on drones, the Autel thermal imaging drone, and I was saying in that video that geofencing was one of the reasons why I would try to stay away from DJI for the bigger ticket drones, but now they've removed that, and I think they removed it basically to spite the United States and the TikTok ban, because it's all, that's what this is all to do with. The decoupling is about to commence. The war with China and the United States is going to take a turn for the worse in 2025. It's going to get ugly, very, very ugly, and it starts off with the TikTok ban. Now, Trump is pretending that he's for he's against the TikTok ban, and understand that everything that you are seeing and hearing, it's all a dog and pony show. Okay, these guys are all on the same team. TikTok, 110% is a national security issue. And it's not even for the reasons that they say. It's not even because they have a backdoor into your phone per se. It's more cultural, man. It's that they are dumbing down people in a way that the Americans only wish they could dumb down the Chinese, but the Chinese don't allow that. So Americans, we live in a glass house, whereas China has multiple firewalls and walls, both literal and figurative, that protect them and insulate them from the Amerocentric worldview. Whereas the Sinocentric worldview is being inculcated surreptitiously into the minds of the very naive young generation that uses TikTok. It has nothing to do with Israel. People are saying, oh, it's because there's pro-Palestinian voices and that's why they're bad. Look, Israel has 10 million people. Like, in the best of possible scenarios, 10 million. It's not even that. It's like 8 million or something. That 10 million people do not dictate the fate of the world. The countries who dictate the fate of the world, China, okay, Europe, Russia, the United States. These are the countries, the movers and shakers. Little old Palestine is not moving the needle on something like TikTok. I guarantee you that. This is a do with the coming war between China and the United States. It's going to start off as a tariff war, the Panama Canal thing, the Greenland thing, the North Sea route. It's all connected to that, okay? The drone thing, the drone sightings, the balloons, everything is going to make sense, okay? If you take all the little data points of the last 5 years and you compress them as it pertains to increased China-United States tensions, the selling off of treasuries, the stockpiling of gold, all that stuff, it's all going to make sense real soon, guys. You got to really view, these things in consolidated timelines. So, we view it as, like, we view World War II, that was 6 years of World War II, okay? So we just think these things are supposed to happen like that. But remember, there was a buildup throughout the 30s, and that's really what we're in. That's the best case scenario. Things could flare up next week. We have Russia and Iran signing a 20-year agreement right before Trump takes office. That ain't no coincidence. Security guarantees, military and economic cooperation are going to form the basis of that agreement. What do they mean by security guarantees? That's a big word because that could potentially have something to do with the nuclear umbrella, although the Russians are jurisprudent enough that if that was the case, I think they would be more explicit about that. Now, ostensibly, the war with Hamas and Israel is at least temporarily concluded, okay? So, 33 hostages. Did anybody ever ask why 33? I've long since suspected that you put yourself in the minds of one of the elites. The elites must get bored. When you have everything, when you have all the money in the world, when you have all the power, and you're walking around the house in the middle of the night, you get bored, You get bored. You want to start, I got to worship something. I got to make some shit up because the smart people are not inventing enough new cool creations for me to indulge in. Something to tide me over until Elon or someone else creates something new playground for me to indulge in. They have to partake in this numerology stuff. Why 33? 33, it's such a powerful number, from Freemasonry to geometry to the Star of David to Amen to the year that Jesus died to the year that you spend in eternity if you're in Islam, to on and on and on and on. And even like on a physical and molecular level, 33 has significance. It's just interesting to me. Anyways, 33 hostages. Sorry to go on a wicked tangent there. This is just a ceasefire. This is not the end of the war, but a lot of people are celebrating as if it is. Of course, the United States and Israel will unilaterally determine when the war ends and begins. If they want to, because look at what has happened in the last, year and a half. Israel has acted with utter impunity with respect to the war crimes that they've committed, and nobody says or does anything. They're never held to account. So all they have to do is say, like, if they want to do something else, whether it's in the Gaza Strip or the West Bank, they'll create some sort of a reason that they had to go and do it. So the only reason why they're slowing down now is probably because they want to regroup or because they want to focus on Iran. And all of these proxy conflicts that they've been engaged in have precluded them from doing so. Now that they're freed up and they can focus their efforts and set their sights on that, and they got Syria now, so they got a clear pathway to fly and go and do the airstrikes if that's what they decide to do, although I think there's other methods, as we're going to discuss in just a moment here. That's what they're going to do. Iran is building 800, or has built an 800-meter deep nuclear facility. And I have a gentleman who's a defector from Iran. We have a video here to share with you, and he claims that they have 800-meter deep nuclear facilities, and they've dispersed their nuclear components throughout the country. So ain't no bunker buster in the world, even if it's mounted with the biggest strategic warhead you can throw on it and delivered with pinpoint precision from a U.S. stealth bomber, you're just not getting that deep. The 800 meters is too deep. You know, I think 200, is it 200 feet or 200 meters is the GB-57? That's the deepest, and that's in the most ideal of conditions with the softest kind of earth and no concrete. No, it's not happening. So there's other ways that they're going to potentially try to figure out a way to crack the Iranian nuclear code. Iran is, and it could be something cyber, it could be espionage, it could be sabotage, who knows. But apparently the Iranians claim that they have now found some very similar explosive devices in different components of their nuclear facilities, much like was the case with Hezbollah. Anyways, Iran is expanding their comprehensive military exercises, and they've refused to engage in direct nuclear talks with the United States. They also reject the notion that they've put a hit on Trump's head, despite, of course, Soleimani being assassinated under Trump's watch. I really do think that were it not for this COVID pandemic, we probably would have seen shit get a little crazy in Iran. And now that I think about it, wasn't Iran one of the first countries that really got hit hard? It was China, Italy, Iran, right? I wonder if there was some biowarfare component to all of that. Who knows? We'll never know. China simulated an attack on Starlink, showing that Starlink's 14,000 satellites could be disabled by 99 Chinese satellites within only a few hours using a combination of lasers and microwaves, and that China has its own Starlink equivalent called, I don't know how to pronounce this, I'm just going to say Qifan, mega constellation consisting of 15,000 satellites that is currently in the process of putting up into the air, or into space, I should say. Now, when they say lasers and microwaves, of course, they're talking about these satellites getting within proximity of Starlink satellites, I presume, and somehow neutralizing them with their satellite laser beams. I don't know. I don't know much about the technology. It's an article from the Eurasia Times, completely cross-reference. It's something that exists, but I don't know all the technical details of it. South Korean president has been arrested. Who knows what sort of effect that is going to have on North Korean, South Korean relations. I presume it's not going to be good. Back to America. The TikTok ban, as I indicated, lawyers are saying that there's actually going to be a penalty and punishment for using a VPN to access TikTok in the US. Now, Trump said today that he's going to try to do something. Elon Musk is going to try to buy it. All of the Gen Zers are now going over to this new thing. What the hell is it called? Tiananmen Square or something. I don't know what it is. But it's one of those things. Anyways, Red Book or something like that. Something really hyper-communistic. something, if you try to criticize the Chinese government, the communist government there, then you're immediately suspended and banned, yet everybody is moving over to that platform. So people are desperate, and I'm surprised, actually, that the platform is not being offered up for sale for one of the other big tech tycoons, because you can be assured that YouTube, Facebook, X, all of these companies would love to get their hands on TikTok, if only to just turn it off so that they force all those people onto their platform, or try to merge it with their own platform. I think Elon Musk would love to get TikTok and somehow merge it, because of course where X lacks is in the video streaming department. So they would be happy to pay top dollar, I believe, for TikTok. But at this point in time, what choice is TikTok going to have? They're going to basically, be forced to sell it for pennies on the dollar, and perhaps that's part of the strategy here. Let me see how much time I got left here. Been ranting and raving. I didn't know this, but Pituffik, I've assumed as much, but I thought maybe these operations were more in Canada, but I'm probably mispronouncing this. Pituffik Space Base might be getting an expansion, and that is the base in Greenland, okay? This is a missile warning and defense base operated by NORAD, and of course House Republicans are now pushing a bill to purchase Greenland. So it's actually quite possibly maybe happening to some extent. Maybe they're only going to sell a part of it. I believe that that could be part of the concession. We're seeing egg prices and egg shortages reach records due to bird flu. People in California are being arrested because they're disguising themselves, and this is exactly what I predicted. They're disguising themselves as first responders whilst looting. If you haven't seen my video on masks and disguises in SHTF, I didn't intend it in this way. I intend for good guys to use disguises in order to evade corrupt dystopian governments and things of that nature, but people are actually using my teachings for evil, it would appear. So perhaps I got to put more of a disclaimer in there. They're estimating that the cost of these fires could reach $275 billion. Now, something that I've noticed with the wildfire situation is that I'm looking at the Weather Network update, and I have some weather news to report as well with respect to a major polar vortex that's about to hit North America. But I'm noticing that, I don't know, things aren't lining up as they're saying. They keep saying there's going to be these big wind gusts and windstorms in California. Yet I look on the Weather Network and I see very, moderate winds, if not, like 5 to 7 mile per hour winds. So it's almost, this is like unfolding just like COVID did, where at first they said, not a big deal. And then, of course, you have excessive government overreach. And just the way that people are losing their minds over that particular issue. The way that Trump and Elon are politicizing it, I don't agree with. I believe that the recrimination that Elon is levying against Gavin Newsom, as Trump calls him, I don't agree with that. I think when you're in a crisis, the best thing to do, especially that Trump could do, I think, is to show some sort of solidarity with the people. And then later on, in hindsight, go back and say, okay, this is what could have been done better. It doesn't appear very statesman-like behavior that is currently underway. And I think, it's just a sign of the times. If this is how we are going to respond, especially on a state-by-state level, to any sort of natural disaster and crisis, especially as we're entering an age of natural disaster and crisis, then that's not good for national solidarity. So I don't know what sort of conciliatory actions can be taken between the states and the federal government moving forward, but it's looking like things are just going to continuously fall apart from here on in, and we just got to get used to it. So people are disguising themselves as firefighters and looting homes in California that have burned down. I mean, that's exactly what you would expect to see. During the collapse, U.S. is building 4 more nuclear submarines. There are currently plans to deploy small modular nuclear reactors in subterranean facilities 1 mile underground to power data centers. And this is going to take place by 2029. They're going to be building mile-deep nuclear reactors, small modular reactors, and they're going to be powering Skynet with said reactors. Okay? Now, Ray Kurzweil, futurist, inventor, said that in 2029, we will achieve artificial general intelligence. Sam Altman, who was just accused of some really heinous sexual molestation by his sister, which the media completely forgot about, and you guys probably never even heard about, but it happened, 100% happened. In fact, he tweeted about it. Well, anyways, he's saying that artificial general intelligence is going to happen this year. So if that's the case, that's a wild card. You know, that could change everything, everything. And we're not going to know until they tell us. It's going to be invented long before they tell us. In fact, it's probably already here. And these throttled LLMs that they provide us, these large language models, probably don't even scratch the surface of what they're truly capable of for national security concerns. You're not going to put ChatGPT out there if that could be leveraged by the Russians and the Chinese. You're going to give some diluted version of that, and you're going to keep the weaponized version to yourself. And Vladimir Putin, remember what he said. He said, whoever invents artificial intelligence, real AGI, will rule the world. And so that's what they're racing towards. That's what Chinese are racing towards. That's what all the chips and all that stuff is about. The chip wars, which is interesting because TSMC, the Taiwan chip manufacturing corporation, they're now actually manufacturing chips, 4-nanometer chips, inside the United States. They've already started production, which means that, you know, maybe they're not going to be so gung-ho on fighting a war over Taiwan after all. But subterranean nuclear reactors powering AGI. And that's not all these subterranean nuclear reactors are going to be used for. The fact that they're considering doing this at all leads me to believe that they likely, for continuity of government, already have these types of facilities underground. If there's already an approval for this, or a plan for this even, then that must mean that there's some prototype out there somewhere. They wouldn't first just use it for data centers. There's got to be underground nuke reactors somewhere. And the Russians, Chinese, you can bet that they have that. So that we know that it's possible now means that it's likely probably already in existence. Major polar vortex next week. I just realized that I haven't changed the screen but twice since this video began. I have a lot of tabs open here that I'll share with you. China has had a bird flu outbreak once again. H9N2 and H1ON3 variants. Another child has been diagnosed, and effectively they've recovered from bird flu in California, and they don't know where they caught it. So that means that bird flu is everywhere. Again, 2025 is the year of social chaos, upheaval, market crash, bird flu, and war with Iran. Marburg outbreak in Tanzania. 88% fatality. 8 people of 9 have died. However, the Tanzanian government has officially stated that it's not Marburg. Great. But what is it? That's the question. Okay, let's quickly look at this. This is all the places that were hit in the recent bombardment by NATO cruise missiles and Ukrainian drones. Russia getting lit up like a Christmas tree. Lots of videos of that. Massive bombardments all over. The sirens are blaring. Holy shit, that's crazy. Wow. I don't know if that was what that was. Was that a missile interception? Guy speaking Russian. What's going on here? That looks like an interception. That might be an interception. Okay, what else we got here? These are videos from like 2 days ago, man. I've been meditating on a mountaintop, guys. Or as we call it here in Saskatchewan, a hill. Hoping that the universe will endow me with its secrets. This is a intercontinental ballistic missile radar that is currently in Pearl Harbor, I do believe. I think this is the only one of its kind, but don't quote me on that. They call it the Death Star, and it's supposed to be somewhere in between the United States and China, okay, and North Korea. So I'm not sure what they're doing with it, where it's currently located, but, just something to keep an eye on. According to the State Duma, men in Russia need to prepare for a new mobilization. Okay, maybe they're not buying the Trump stuff. Deputy Alexei Zuravelov believes that in 2028 to 2029, Europe and its allies will be ready to fight Russia. Well, Mark Rutte said that. So, of course, now Russia, with all of this experience and all the blood that they've shed, man, I mean, that's something money really can't buy. All of those experience points that they got. This is why Ukraine has so much leverage. Because when it comes to fighting a conventional war, the most experienced people now are the Ukrainians, of course, many of them who've been trained by NATO. But they have the frontline experience, and the Russians. Russia suffered a big cyber attack the other day, which is no longer news. There was a hack of Russian TV stations. I don't have the video here, but on the TV station appeared this warning that an assassination attempt has been made on the president of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, and Ramzan Kadyrov had seized power. I don't think he's next in line. So clearly this was a Ukrainian hack, we can presume by now. And so shit like this is happening every single day. Here's what Jake Sullivan said, the vampire, Count Dracula himself, had to say that has a few people spooked, okay? One last word. Let me just see if I can get some better volume for you guys here.
Which is, I hope this is my last time at this podium, at least for a little while. I don't mean that in a negative sense. I mean, the only thing that would bring me back is an unexpected event in the next few days, which, as you all know, is totally possible given everything you've seen over the course of the past years.
Okay, so people are reading in to that remark. I think it was an off-the-cuff remark. I wouldn't read too deep into it. Of course, he could be right. Anything can happen. But who knows? I don't think it was indicative that there are plans that are being harbored that could potentially pose a risk to the Trump inauguration. I just can't see it. So, but anything is possible. I can see it, but I think right now they're resigned to the fact that Trump is going to be in the driver's seat, and regardless, all of the people who need to be around Trump to make sure that he plays ball in the way that the supposed deep state establishment wants, they're already in place. And I think it's going to be a much different presidency than the 2016 to 2021. TikTok is going to be shutting off on Sunday. We talked about that. This is kind of funny. Lithuania would consider troop deployments to Ukraine upon Kiev's request. All 7 of Lithuania's troops will participate in the Ukraine war if requested. Now, this is from NTD News. They claim that there's an H5N1 outbreak spreading in China. Now, I don't even think I'm going to play this for you. This news agency is birthed from the Falun Gong religious movement, which is excessively anti-Chinese, anti-communist Chinese. And so they, 2 years ago, spread a story about white lung in China. And I said at the time that, Falun Gong, all this association, so take it with a grain of salt. But they are claiming that there is currently an H5N1 outbreak spreading in China, and that the Chinese are trying to keep it under wraps. I'm not going to say it's not happening. The conditions are ripe for it. Here's the map of all of the places that are currently affected by bird flu. It's everywhere, And if it's not every single place, it will be every single place soon. it is endemic, at least in the bird populations. So yes, if you want more information, go and research. They're claiming a source, right? So what does that even mean? But you're never going to know what's going on in China. Remember how they were controlling their COVID numbers for those few years. You're never going to know. We do know that there's confirmed cases of avian influenza, other than the H5N1 variant. Several cases in China right now that have been reported. With respect to the risk of Marburg virus, I mean, you really can't put any stock in what the WHO says, considering that on January 14th of 2020, what did they say? They said, don't worry, there's no human-to-human transmission. So, take this for what it's worth, but they claim that the risk of suspected MVD outbreak is assessed to be high. I believe that's Marburg virus at the national level due to several concerning factors. The suspected outbreak thus far involves at least 9 suspected cases, including 8 deaths, resulting in a fatality rate of 89%. They say that the regional risk is considered high because it emerged in 2 different regions of the country at the same time. Okay, so I mean, that could mean that it is something in the food, maybe it's waterborne, who knows. But they're saying that the global risk is currently assessed to be low. Well, they said that during COVID too. This is the official press release by the Tanzanian government. They're actually claiming that it is not Marburg virus, but they don't know what it is that has an 89% fatality rate. Marburg, of course, as far as I know, is very similar to Ebola. Okay, this one's interesting. Israel rigs centrifuge technology with explosives. Iran alleges they claim to have discovered some explosive materials in various components of their nuclear facilities that I presume Israel in some way, shape, or form were able to intercept and embed with some sort of explosive device. So the Iranians have figured that out. This guy was the guy who was saying, and I don't have the exact quote here, but he was the one who was saying that the Iranians have 800-meter deep bunkers, and that the only way they're going to be able to combat the Iranians, because there's no way to take out their nuclear program in the current state, otherwise they probably would have already, is assassinations and acts of sabotage and possible cyber attacks. And so the question is, if they do that, we know what Iran has done in response to assassinating other state leaders on its territory. We can only imagine what Iran is going to do now. What will they do now that Trump is in office? Are they going to believe the Donald Trump bluster that things are going to be worse? Or are they going to continuously act in the way that they have in the past year? I guess time will tell. This is what it's all about, guys. This is why the Russians and the Iranians are forming this strategic pact. Russia needs to keep diversified. And so it's all about a pipeline through Iran to support the Indian market, which is a massive market. That is what, nearly one quarter of the world's population. And Russia, of course, wants access to that market. Tehran is expanding its Bushehr nuclear plant with 5,000 more workers. Here are the details of the 3-phase proposal for a durable peace in the Middle East. Phase 1 is a complete ceasefire, withdrawal from Israeli forces from populated areas, a release of the number of hostages, including Americans, women, and elderly. Some of them, of course, are going to be deceased. The bodies presumably have been maintained. Palestinian civilians can return to their neighborhoods, and we'll see a surge in humanitarian aid. Phase 2 is a permanent end to the war, exchange for the release of the remaining hostages. Israeli forces will withdraw from Gaza, and a temporary ceasefire will become permanent. So they say. There'll be major reconstruction plans for Gaza, and the final remains of hostages will be returned to their families. Now, this, again, this is all unilaterally decided. At the end of the day, if there isn't an excuse for them to go in there, they could make one if they so chose. So a lot of this still doesn't make sense to me. How Hamas is still able to operate really is a testament to subterranean warfare and the effectiveness of that style of asymmetrical conflict. I mean, if Hamas has demonstrated anything, they've demonstrated that that style of waging a war, for better or for worse, works. Obviously, they were, their people were murdered in the thousands, if not casualties in the hundreds of thousands, completely decimating their population. But I mean, it worked. You have these, it's like shooting fish in a barrel, one of the most surveilled, surrounded, completely cut off from the rest of the world, and they're still fighting somehow, some way, which makes you wonder, I mean, how are they still fighting? Are they being allowed to do this? Money market funds assets are at record highs, okay? So this is the money that's kind of on the sidelines, and which tells you that, people are waiting, big money is waiting for a crash, okay? They're keeping a lot of powder dry. But investors, retail investors, are telling themselves that there is less than a 10% probability of a crash in the next 6 months, and that is currently at a record high. It is approaching 45%. And so higher than at any time in history. So what that means is that the amount of people right now who think that a crash is imminent is at a record low, okay? Even though the market is at a record high overvaluation. So that's, the hysteria that we find ourselves in. All currencies are collapsing, continuously collapsing against the dollar. Here's the rupee down here right now. Canadian dollar ain't too far behind. The US dollar index keeps ticking upwards. Chinese 30-year government-issued bonds are crashing. Crashing through the floor, man. Holy shit. Everything is being reshuffled here. Cattle prices are they're at record highs, far and away beyond record highs, nearing $200 per, how many pounds would that be? I don't know. I'm not sure how that's measured, but it's at a record high. Beef is at a record high. What else do we got here? Oh, yeah. So, big storms coming. Cold streak coming. I believe that the Eastern and Texas grids are going to be put on immense amount of stress in the coming weeks ahead as a result of a anomalous weather pattern, which is going to see a polar vortex descend into the United States in particular. And it's going to be bad. It's going to be, temporary, but it's going to be cold and it's going to put a lot of stress on the grid, which is probably why we're seeing natural gas prices ticking upwards and possibly even oil to a certain extent. But, all the more reason to be prepared. This is why I try to drive home winter preparedness in any possible way I can. I'll leave you on this note. This is rather interesting. Let's check out what technology has in store for us. So this is a guy who's hooked up a ChatGPT 4 to a robotic gun, Sentry type dealio, and he's going to give you a little demonstration of what this thing can do. So basically, he's just giving voice commands to a robotic Sentry with some sort of visual identification system.
Begin color tracking on the color black.
Track the color black. Shoot anything that's black.
Change tracking color to blue.
Shoot the blues. Not always accurate, it looks like. Not the greatest reaction time.
Change tracking color to yellow.
Further instructions?
That's pretty crazy, and that's just one guy So imagine what the U.S. military has
This is
in
a
store
new
for us.
product I'm developing. It's a fully automated AI-enabled pneumatic nailing tool, and I think this is going to be super transformational for the construction industry in 2025. So keep an eye out for more updates.
Ah, he's a comedian. Going to be very transformational for the construction companies, okay? Constructing what? A dystopian world? I think so. All right, so happy coronavirus is not human-to-human transmission day, everybody. If you want to support the channel, check out CanadianPreparedness.com.